Legal teams have more AI options than ever, but a good AI demo is not the same thing as a defensible legal workflow. That gap is what this podcast is about. Welcome to the orchestration layer. I'm Brandon Jessup. I'm joined by Ari Perlstein and Sashi Valavala. Together, we spend a lot of time in the practical middle between AI tools and legal outcomes. Ari, Sashi, great to be here with you both.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
All right. Well, listen, let's dive right in here. I think let's frame the challenge here a little bit, Sashi. So I think there's a lot of interest in AI right now, but when legal teams start to move from that interest in AI to actually using AI live in a workflow, where do things usually get harder than they expected?
Yeah, when people think of AI, they think about ChatGPT type prompts. When those prompts are important, the use case on why and where you want to use the prompts becomes critical. So understanding the exact need, understanding the use case, and defining the workflow before you write the prompt becomes important. So it's not just the model, it is about use case. For example, if you're looking to find key documents within your corpus, then you need to frame the corpus first, then define what you're looking for. You're not looking for every key document. You're looking for thematically what any key documents that are in the workflow. And then you write a prompt to find what those key documents would look like. And the system will go find it. So the use case becomes more important. The workflow on how you get there becomes important. And the prompt comes as the last piece of what you ask the model to find for you, so to speak.
So in some ways, this isn't just this plug and play. I have this super powerful tool. I bought it and now the magic happens, right? You need somebody who's coming in and helping you to get the most value out of that tool. So I think, we're talking about what is the challenge here. We have this super powerful tool. Now we're trying to figure out, well, how do we get maximum value out of it? So I think we start transitioning into this whole idea of the orchestration layer. And so when we say orchestration layer, what exactly does that mean? What are we referring to?
Yeah, I mean, the key here is that there are so many different tools out there. There's so much, so much news happening every day with the different models and changes and releases. And it's a lot to try to sift through all that. You really need somebody that, or really a team of people that understands what's happening every day in the AI world, in the legal space, and in your niche to be able to orchestrate all of the different tools, recommend the tools that are appropriate for your task, and then actually get it done. Because just because you have the tool doesn't mean that it's going to give you a great outcome. Understanding, the different nuances, the different use cases, and then how to actually get the best result after going and iterating, once it's not enough, you may need to iterate 30 times even, right? And understanding how to do that properly, who is best at doing that, and having a structure, a decision log, and other things to make sure you're back.
I mean, we're really talking about the human in the loop here, right?
Yeah.
Which I think in our industry, especially as we think about defensibility, is really key to be able to say, hey, there was human oversight here. And to your point, Ari, that QC process, the audit trail, all of these different things that we need to make sure that we have here. All right. Well, Sashi, I'm going to come back over to you again here. So we're talking about this orchestration layer, how important this is. What are the signs that a team has the AI tools, but maybe they're lacking the orchestration layer?
Yeah, the orchestration is that exact human in the loop that we were just talking about. It's understanding the use case. So for example, if you're looking to review documents and make a decision whether a document is responsive or not responsive, the tools that you need, the level of human involvement that you need in order to make a successful coding decision on every document within your corpus is going to be very different from a use case where you're looking for, like we talked about earlier, about key documents. So that orchestration on when the tools becomes relevant for which use case is the key. And they are defined based on not just the tool that you have, but based on your outcome. Understanding privilege and identifying privilege is very different than understanding for responsiveness versus key documents. So when your use case is properly defined, the orchestration comes from the human in the loop. and the tool that you bring to deliver on the solution that you're seeking to execute on.
Yeah, Sashi, it's interesting when we think about, what could go wrong here? How are we not maximizing value? I think some of the custom use cases that we're certainly leveraging and our team is very adept at identifying. That's part of this, right? So you're talking about, let's start with the problem that you're trying to solve. And now let's figure out how we can leverage the available tools to maximum effect to get you to that end goal. And it feels like, well, these are all purpose built, right? Like we have, and not to get too specific on products here, but we have relativity error for review. We have, error assist. We have all of these different tools, but we're coming up with, I think, Sashi, you've called them off-roading use cases where we have a tool and we say, hey, this is a great tool, but we found we can use it in this different way. And that's really powerful. And I think that's a really great example of the orchestration layer, right? This is somebody coming in saying, I understand the capabilities of the tool. I understand what it was built to do. And not only do I know how to do that very effectively to QC it, to make sure it's defensible, but I also know these other ways that we can use this tool to meet specific needs. So I don't know if, Sashi, maybe you want to elaborate on that a little.
Yeah, so that's a great point about off-roading. So we do that because we want to purpose fit a solution towards a problem. The tool becomes less important at that point. All of these are very powerful tools. Like any AI you take is a powerful tool. It can do a lot, but how to deploy it makes all the difference. And that's what the orchestration layer, where the human in the loop and the technology come together to deliver the solution. And this orchestration, part of the orchestration is validation. I mean, this is one of the things that we talk in our industry about trust but verify. At the end of the day, it has to hold up in the court. So when you are talking about orchestration, you have to have a focus in mind that it has to stand up to the scrutiny of the opposing counsel. It has to stand up to the scrutiny of the courts. And that validation becomes part of your orchestration layer as well. So when you go off-roading or you're using a purpose fit product, it all comes down to the end goal, which is, will it stand up? Is there a validation built into the workflow?
Yeah, it's so important in our industry, this whole piece about trust. And so this goes back to the whole point of this podcast, which is, hey, you may have this great AI demo, but is it legally defensible? Is there a legally defensible workflow here? And if there isn't, then people aren't going to adopt it, and they shouldn't be, because it's presenting risk. And I think, really in our industry, a lot of what we're doing is managing risk. All right, as legal teams are looking to deploy AI in their workflows, let's talk through some of the questions that maybe they should be asking themselves. So maybe we can get some real tangible takeaways here that we can share with our listeners. Ari, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the way that the interface around the model works, right? So a lot of people are saying, using the term model often to describe all kinds of things. Really what the model is, Claude's Opus or GPT, 5.1 made by OpenAI, right? When you build an interface around that model, you need to make sure that you're doing validation properly. And a lot of these tools are not doing that. I'll get on a demo with a new tool and I'll say, okay, well, how are you providing QC that, this citation came from the document? And they say, well, the tool, the model generated that citation. I said, okay, but what, did it hallucinate that? It said, oh, we've never seen it do that. Well, that's not good enough, right? That's not going to stand up in court. You need to make sure that after the model generates a citation and content on behalf of the four corners of a document, that it is doing validation that the citation actually exists in the document. And if it doesn't, it tells you that. And in addition, there's lots of other tools out there that, aren't necessarily going to go through every single document. It's going to be more of a chat interface where I'm going to, ask a question. It's going to, do a search across my population and give me an answer. Well, a lot of people think that search is complete, that I put 100,000 documents in this index and I ran my query and I asked my question and it searched those 100,000 documents and it gave me my answer. That's not true. It's going to only search across the top K or top number of documents that the tool's configured to do, right? It's going to pull vectors or small samples of text from, say, the top 100 documents, or it's going to take the top 100 vectors across 5 documents. You really don't know. It all depends on how the tool is built. And then it's going to describe that and surface the result from the model. But it didn't do a search across your 100,000 documents. It just did a fuzzy search across the index that you created. Still a very powerful tool, right? Still an interesting use case and a great way to get insight quickly. But understanding how the tool operates, is it pulling back the first 100? Is it limited to one path? Can it do multiple passes across until it finds sort of a diminishing returns? How is it iterating? How is it then validating the citations it got from the vector index? There's a lot of things that are really important to understand how that tool works so that you can effectively, leverage that use case.
Yeah.
Ari, I really like that point. We have these powerful tools out there, but sometimes understanding what the limitations are is the real risk here. Like, hey, I ran this, it gave me a great answer, but knowing that maybe that answer is limited in some way, whatever that may be, is critically important, when we think about defensibility. And so I think if I would summarize that, I would say, can we explain and defend the process, right? We know what it is, and that is a really important item for us as we're thinking about how we're leveraging AI in whatever workflow. Sashi, I'm going to come over to you. Anything that you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this: AI can create speed without confidence. So if you don't have validation and accountability built into your orchestration layer, it is not going to be useful, or it is not going to be dependable as a work product that the legal industry demands from us.
I mean, Sashi, great point. You can get to a really fast, partially accurate answer is really a failure, right? Like, this may be true, but it may not be the full answer. And that's really something. And I think that's, really emphasizing your point from earlier as well, Ari. So I want to go back, Sashi. There are things every time I've worked with you and we've worked together for a number of years, it's always a pause point at the beginning, right? Somebody comes in and they say, hey, I want to use this tool. Hey, Sashi, I know about this tool. I want to use this tool. And for you, what I really appreciate is you always pump the brakes and you go, whoa, let's stop and talk about what is the problem we're trying to solve. And sometimes what you realize is it's not that tool that is the best tool to use for whatever that end goal is. And so I think first and foremost, before you ask anything else, you have to be asking, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And then you can start to work from there, as opposed to saying, hey, I identified the right tool and now I want to figure out how to use that tool for this solution.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is understanding the problem. There are sometimes so many ways, and AI, you might not even need an AI. And understanding that critical point at the beginning helps you achieve to the goal, because you can always bring some tool to run. It could be, a conceptual search tool, or it could be a TAR technology that somebody would come in and saying that I want to use CAL or TAR 1.0, or somebody coming in and saying that I want to use generative AI tools. At the end of the day, it comes down to, what is the purpose? What is your workflow? And QC and validation has to be thought about at upfront, not added at the end. And so all of these have to be factored into the initial conversation and design the workflow from there. And then we bring the tools. And that's what we at Cimplifi strive to do, is bring the right tool for the right use case, and asking the questions up front. It becomes a critical point of the consultation process.
Yeah, thank you, Sashi. And I think you've been really instrumental in helping me to think about, listen, some of these legacy workflows are still very compelling and have their appropriate use case. All right, well, Ari, you talked a little bit about the tools, but let's talk about the underlying data, right? Because if the data isn't good, it doesn't matter how powerful the tool is, you're not going to get a great outcome here. And so I think a piece of this is we're thinking about implementing an AI workflow, whether that's in, the context of some of our more standard workflows or something else that comes up. The data has to be good, and that has to be your starting point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of skip over, everybody's so excited about AI, they skip over the collection mechanisms and understanding that, you've actually got access to the data, you actually got all of the data, and that, you know, the content you've received is actually capable of being analyzed by AI, right? So, you know, making sure that you're still, you know, pulling linked documents, that you're using appropriate forensics or full file system collection if it's more of an investigative workflow on, you know, mobile devices, that as you're converting, you know, into some sort of short message content from all of the various chat tools that we've got, you know, obviously AI being one of the newcomers on the scene, generating a whole lot of content there. And then making sure that, you know, the way the documents have been processed and placed into some kind of repository, that they were either, you know, extracted properly, that all the text is there, that that text and metadata as needed is getting journaled to the AI for analysis, and that, you know, whatever isn't appropriate for AI analysis is called out early and often, so that you can come up with some other workflow. Obviously, there's lots of tools that are still very effective. We don't want people to forget that, you know, TAR and other, you know, legacy training models are really effective, that search terms are really effective, and that, you know, junk analysis is also something we should still be doing, right? Those are very fast, effective methods for calling down a population. In lots of ways, you know, AI often is using search terms first in the background, especially these chat mechanisms. They are parsing your query into terms, running those terms across a vector index, and then populating results. That will always be a huge use case for you know, AI analysis going forward. So understanding what the terms are that you're using, understanding the terms that the AI is using, that it chose based on the dictionary and the index and the vectors available to it, you know, can be really, really powerful, you know, a way to leverage these tools as well, sort of in reverse. So
Ari, you made a great point here. And I'm just as an aside here, you know, thinking about AI as a source, we're talking about how we leverage AI, which critically important. It is the point of this episode, but at the same time, for people to be aware that those prompts, oftentimes they are being stored now, they may be discoverable. That is a really critical point too. And I think in a future episode, we may actually talk about the collection of those prompts and how they can be reviewed. So we'll put a pin in that. So I think if I go through here and I just think about what we've talked about and I summarize some high level points here, I think we can come up with 6 questions that legal teams can go through as their AI checklist. And I'm going to summarize them like this. So number 1, what problem are we solving? Number 2, what data are we using and what is the quality of that data? Number 3, what tool is right for this task? And Sashi, again, this goes back to some of what you were talking about. Number 4, where does human judgment belong? When are we reviewing? How are we reviewing? Who is doing this? How are we validating is also a part of that. And again, how will we measure success? So going back to that validation point, what does good look like? And then lastly, can we explain or defend the process? So it's great to have a very powerful tool that gives you an answer, but if you can't go back and explain whether that answer is a complete or a partial answer, or that it's an accurate answer, if you can't defend that in the future, then it frankly isn't going to work in a legal workflow. So thank you both. Really great takeaways here. I'm just going to go back to both of you for any closing thoughts that you have here. Just thinking about this transformation, about you know, the orchestration layer, as we're calling it. Ari, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's something we're excited to, you know, try to get more content out to the public so that they understand, you know, the constant change and churn that's happening every day. Hopefully we can boil down some of the current events, you know, some of the tools that are out there and ways to think about, you know, approaching your data using AI in a responsible way.
Yeah, thank you, Ari. Sashi, closing thought from you?
Yeah, AI works best when the team is clear on the decision it is trying to improve. And that's the fundamental that people should take away on their everyday work.
Thank you, Sashi. So for me, what I would say, you know, key takeaway here is whatever the workflow is, it has to be defensible. And so you have to stop and ask yourself, is this defensible? If somebody asks you how you came up with this answer, how are you going to justify it? How are you going to validate the accuracy of the information that you're providing? So All right. Well, that's a wrap for us. So for future episodes, we're going to unpack a lot of other practical issues related to AI. We touched on one potential topic here as we talk about AI as a source, but there certainly is a lot of other content out there. We'll talk about AI in review, privilege, defensibility, governance, data readiness, everything from pilots to production. So stay tuned. If you have a topic that you would like to hear from us, please let us know. We're happy to talk about it. And if this conversation would be useful to someone on your litigation, support, legal ops, discovery, contracts, or innovation team, share it with them. Follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And thank you for tuning in to the Orchestration Layer.